Hey guys, it's me, Jody Hand, Mrs. Hand Painted, and I'm here tonight with a tutorial for a very simple beginner landscape painting of a sunset with some grasses. And I know you guys might be wondering, I'm always using these expensive professional paints in all of my tutorials, and I don't have those. You might be thinking, and you want to know how you could do this with some inexpensive supplies. I'm using tonight on this video these, they're from Prima Marketing or Art Philosophy, the company's called now. And their paint palettes, these watercolor confections, are really inexpensive and they're pretty highly pigmented for a student grade paint. So this is the Classics palette I'm going to be using. And then I am using my Princeton Velvetouch brushes, which are not super expensive, but you can really use whatever flat brush or a large round brush you want, and then a small detail brush. I'm using a dagger striper in this, but you can use a 1 round or a liner or rigger brush for the grasses if you don't have those. And then I'm using a paper block, size 5x7 from Fabriano Artistico. It's 100% cotton paper. But like I explained in my video, if you don't have that, use whatever paper you have, but make sure you tape it down really well for landscapes, because we are wetting the paper down completely and you don't want the paper to buckle or curl up as you're painting. So I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. I'd love to show you your paintings. If you want to share them with me, you can use my hashtag Mrs. Hand Painted on Instagram and tag me there. Right, tonight I'm going to be doing just a simple landscape of a sunset with some grass coming up from the bottom, some tall kind of like wheat grass type of a drawing silhouette. And I'm going to use one of the first paint sets I ever had, which still have quite a bit of. This is the Art Philosophy from Prima Marketing. It's their Classics palette. And we're going to be using that. It's a little less expensive. Maybe some more of you this might be more accessible to you, especially if you're a beginner. This is what I started out with, was this exact palette. And then I got other ones and then started trying more professional paints. And now I usually use some Daniel Smith paints or Magello Mission Gold paints as my go-tos. But I wanted to just go back and use these and try to do a simple sunset landscape for you. This is Fabriano Artistico 100% cotton paper, and it's a size 5x7 block, and it is the rough texture. And I like using rough texture paper for landscapes because it just gives you a little bit different of a look and more texture in your paintings, especially for landscapes. If you don't have that, just use any cotton paper is going to work the best for the blending, and you're going to get less of those blooms on your paper if you use alpha cellulose based paper. But use whatever you have. Just know that you don't want the water to pool up too much so that you don't get those feathery textures on there. I'm going to be using 3 brushes here from Princeton Velvetouch series. I'm going to use a 1/2 inch flat wash brush, a number 10 round, and this is a 1/4 inch dagger striper, and I'll be using that for the grasses at the end. If you don't have a dagger striper, you can certainly just use like a size 1 round, or if you have a rigger or a liner brush, something that's very thin that will give you those nice thin grasses, that would work too. Okay, you want to have clean water to wet your paper with. I sometimes like to use just a little spray bottle just to help me wet my paper down a little faster. And then I'll get my wash brush wet and I'll just evenly wet the paper. And you just want to take a look at it on an angle in the light, make sure you don't have any really pooled up spots, and get the whole paper evenly wet. Alright, and I'm going to start with like a dark blue and going down into a purple, a pink, orange, yellow, and then it'll be black on the bottom for my grass. So this set has not as many colors, so I'm actually going to mix up a really deep blue. Use this number 8 blue. I'll try and mix some of that purple with it. And since I have kind of limited colors, I'm just going to add a little black to it. Let's start off with that at the top. And then just keep adding in more blue as we go down. And we might have to do a couple layers because this is not as pigmented of paint as, say, Daniel Smith or maybe like Shinhan watercolors. This is more of a student grade paint, so it's not going to have as deep of a pigment. Now I'm going to transition into the pink. So mix a little bit of that in there. Do a line of that. And I do keep rinsing my brush because I don't want my color to get mixed into that. So every time you go back into the pans, rinse your brush. If I'm getting a little bit too much water like I am right there, I'm getting a little too bright for my liking. I want to start transitioning to that orange color. I'm going to get some yellow. Now I remember why I quit using these. There, and I blend that together so I don't get more of an orange. Alright, so I'm very light up here, and I would like that to be a lot darker. So after I get done making my way down this way, alright, and I want my sun to be about here, so I kind of want to leave more of a white area, so just kind of avoid when you're pulling this yellow down, just kind of make yourself a little circle and don't really paint over that. Alright, and instead of adding more pigment to my brush, I'm just going to pull with the water down. Alright, and I'm going to start going back, oops, I just touched that. I'm going to start going, and I got some yellow up there by accident, whoops. Alright, get some blue, get some black. Start pulling that down. Get some purple again. One more blue in there. And if you don't like this color combination, you want to do a different kind of sunset, I would just look up some sunset pictures. Just kind of give yourself some inspiration. Get some ideas on what you might want. Alright, now is the time to let this dry so that we can add another layer. If I keep trying to just do this, I'm going to be lifting my pigment up. So I need to let that dry, and then I can add another layer on top if I need to. If you don't have a fancy dryer, you can just use your hair dryer. I guess I should have mentioned the reason I'm using these blocks is so that the paper doesn't buckle. It's glued on all sides. So then when I'm getting this very saturated with water, see, it does ripple a little bit, but at least I'm not getting huge buckles. Like if you just had a sheet of paper, it would be curling up on itself. So this keeps that from doing that. So if you're just using a sheet of paper, make sure that you're taping it down on all sides. I'm going to go ahead and use my dryer just to speed this up. See, I have a little bit of water that started to pool here. One way so that you can avoid getting those feathery blooms if you don't desire that look is while you're drying this is just kind of spread that water out so that you don't get those pooled up areas. And I think just because the paper had buckled a tiny bit, it started to settle in those lower ridges. Is pretty dry. Okay, I want to just kind of give myself a little bit of maybe like cloud color. So in my yellow, I want to mix up some more of like this, more of this orange color. I'm going to make some little strokes going across to try to give it the look of some sweeping clouds here. So this is dry, and I'm going to be adding this on top just to give some layer dimension. My reference picture, which I will share a link to in my video in the comments or in the description, I'll link a picture that I'm using as a reference here. Okay, I have a little bit of this purple here. I'm going to do with my my larger round, my 10, just kind of do some sweeps coming this way into the orange and this way. Alright, and I'll take a little bit of that pink into my yellow. Ooh, that's very bright. Yeah, a little of that purple to tone that down a little bit. Just kind of go very lightly here. And maybe a few down here. Alright, and then up here I want to have a little bit of a shadowy cloud looking area too. So I'll take some of this black, and some of the blue, and a little bit of the purple. I think I got a little too much black in there. I need a little more blue to, here we go. Try to get kind of an indigo color. And I'm just going to do a little bit up here. I'm going to do some little swatches like this. I think I'm going to blend that just a little bit. I don't care for that actually. It was a little too much up there. Okay, I think that looks nice, and I don't want this to be too white, so I'm actually just going to blend that out. So get some clean water on your brush, and then I'm just going to lightly blend that so that I get a little of a blurrier look. Just blend some of that yellow into that white. And we'll kind of go over the top of that with our black. Okay, so dry that. Okay, now we can move on to this dagger stripe, and we're going to do our grass. And I'm going to need quite a bit of black for that. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to have some shorter grasses on this side and then a few tall pieces that are going to come sweep up this way. So I'm going to start by doing some of my tall ones here. I want a nice thin line so you can hold this at an angle, and then as you press down it'll give you a thicker line. So I want to start thicker on the bottom, and then I'm going to lift it lightly as I get to the top. I'll make it a little longer, and that will give me my thinner line. Now I want to add those little, like in the reference photo, there's like some grass blades that come like this. So you kind of going to turn your brush at an angle like this, and you can get those little grass lines. So just kind of dab it down. And if I want that to be connected, I can just dab. And just kind of do it randomly, and you can kind of copy the way that it is in the picture too, just for a reference. here too. I'm going to have another tall one that's going to kind of go across the sun here. I'll start at the top actually and just press down more to get a thicker line as I get to the bottom. Just add a few grass blades coming up this way too. And we have, all right, so then I'm going to do some shorter ones on this side. I'll have kind of a and this would just be the tops of it. We're not having our ground. This is if you were looking up and you had grass in your view, maybe if you were laying on the ground. And just kind of vary the direction on these. You don't want them to all be the same. If we did lots in a row, it wouldn't look as natural. And then we can add in a few that have the little seed pods on the top. Just kind of dabbing with the tip of that brush. And like I said, if you didn't have this dagger brush, you could do the same type of thing with a size 1 round or a 2, just a smaller round brush, or with a liner brush. You just have to maybe go over some of this a little bit more with your end of your round. Okay, I think that looks good. See, you can paint a landscape with just an inexpensive paint set just like this. You don't need to have expensive supplies to make a really beautiful painting. Thanks for painting with me. Have a great night.